All right, welcome back to Rock Forever. We got a very special edition for you. We have the authors of the new book, Eruption, out October 6th, October 5th, I'm sorry.
October 5th, yeah.
Welcome, BradTolinski and Chris Gill.
Hey,
Hello.
Jay, how's it going?
Doing great, man. Loving the book. Like you said in previous interviews, a lot of these books are from a author's perspective, and we've interviewed a number of them. Their impressions of Van Halen, their maybe interactions or their studying, their research. But you guys were quite in the inner circle, and I guess Ed didn't really talk to a lot of people. He was not extrovert, he was not the guy in a crowd of strangers to be the life of the party. So
Sure.
Tell us how you guys were introduced. Obviously, Brad, I know you go way back with Guitar World. How were you guys introduced to Ed, and how did it develop into this?
Well, Guitar World, it was sort of Van Halen central. I mean, he loved how the magazine, dealt with him on a personal and an editorial level. So he had a great sort of affection for the magazine. Some people used to think I had like a Van Halen telephone on my desk, like a red telephone with stripes on it where I could just call Ed, up. But it was essentially this sort of, initially a professional relationship. He loved being in the magazine. He loved the people that interviewed him and spoke his language. And both Chris and I were part of that.
Yeah, for me, my introduction to Ed in person was through Guitar Player magazine. I did an interview with him in November 1994, for the Balance album. And that was kind of the beginning. Of course, it wasn't too long after that I switched camps and moved across the coast and joined up with Brad and the guys over there at Guitar World. And that was just, I partially because I was a little jealous when I was a guitar player and saw the access that they had to Ed, and they had a little bit more of an inside path to him and everything like that. So I was definitely willing to take advantage of that.
Yeah, I guess, Ed was all about guitars, it was his world. So, he could geek out with you guys talking tech and, and all that. And he probably avoided general interviews from the music press that were going to ask him more about, the songwriting, which, obviously he had nothing to do with the lyrics and, so much other stuff that he felt probably awkward about talking about. But, guitars were his world. And, it's pretty amazing. Now, over your course of interviews, how did you see him developing as far as his focus or his state of mind?
I think, Ed was in a constant state of evolution. And like us, all the rest of us mere mortals, he had his ups and downs. And, we were there to sort of see all of it, like when he was as happy as he could be about his work on records like 1984 or when Sammy came into the band. But then we also, I did a couple of interviews with him when things weren't going so great with the band, and he was equally as honest and forthright about that, and at times incredibly emotional about it. He definitely, I had a couple of interviews where he, shed real tears over how, he was worried about the future of the band.
I was lucky too that I got to kind of pick up the baton a bit towards his last 15 years and watched him kind of starting to pull out of the deep dive that he had gone into and this rebirth redemption period that he went through, which was really great to see him making music with his son Wolfgang, and just to see how much that brought out of Ed and how Ed had really become a lot more at ease with things. He kind of let the stuff slide, that used to bother him a lot. He was just really enjoying the moment. He was enjoying the time that he was spending with his son and making music with him and making records with his son. And that, I think, it was a blessing to see that. It was between Wolfgang and Janie, basically, who helped Ed get back on track with his life. And just to know that he was at peace, that he really had even with the former singers in the band and everything, and everybody who he used to have problems with, that he really had gotten over that, and just he'd really just matured and blossomed, into this wonderful person that he kind of always was.
We really set out to tell his entire story in a definitive way. Him as a human being and as a musician, which is such a huge part of his life. And we did it by, comparing, contrasting the events of his life with his own words and memories of those that were close to him, like bassist Michael Anthony or his son Wolfgang. But we wanted to present him as a full, this complex person as a full human being.
I think that was it. It was the fact that he was a composer, an incredible musician / guitarist, but even beyond that, keyboard player, cello player, all these other instruments that he could play. I even played drums.
Inventor.
Yeah, an inventor, a musical instrument inventor. We wanted to show all these sides. I think a lot of other people who have looked at Van Halen kind of look at the more salacious aspect, the infighting, and basically the behind the music type of thing. And we wanted to present Ed first, if Ed was going to sit down and write his own autobiography, which unfortunately didn't have the chance to do, but we had all these interviews with him and let his own words speak for him. And that was the idea, and to present him as this all-encompassing person that really was a lot more than most people, I think, really realize. They see the smiling Ed in these music videos, but he was an intense person and very, very brilliant.
Yeah, you kind of wonder, he and Al coming over here as immigrants at an early age, not really speaking English, speaking English, and not family not having, money to go down the store and buy everything they wanted to play. They're self-made guys, they really went in there and started crafting, what they could, and working odd jobs or working at the music store to try and pay off a Marshall amp or a first guitar they had. And, I think the work ethic really carries through his whole life. A lot of people think that, the best music is made from that creative tension, whether it be him and Roth or, in later years with Sammy. But it's like you say, being at peace, he had so much more to offer, musically. We always wonder what's on those tapes,
Yeah.
On the walls up there. And I'm sure it's a lot of instrumental, noodling around, and, it's certainly not Van Halen songs, or they would have made it onto the albums. But, what can you guys say as far as what you noticed about the work ethic?
Well, he was just constantly working. I mean, we kind of draw this analogy between how Ed went from woodshedding in his bedroom as a teenager, really developing his skills as a guitarist, to building his own studio, 5150, and he would kind of lock himself away in there and create. And that was really just an extension of the bedroom. But yeah, he was just constantly, his mind was constantly working, whether it was ideas for new music or whether it was instrument design, that sort of thing. I think that's one thing that also people overlook is with his EVH company, that was another creative outlet for Ed. Ed wasn't recording, at least releasing new records. In fact, we only had A Different Kind of Truth in the last 20 years of his life, was the only new album that he put out of new studio material. But during that period, he was working on these guitars and these amplifiers and all these other products. And he just was tinkering, he had guitar parts out on a workbench, and he was just constantly putting stuff together and trying this and trying that. And even after he spent 2 years perfecting the Wolfgang, he still was just looking for new things to do, new ways to improve it, new avenues to explore. He never really seemed to ever give up that drive and that fascination.
Yeah, when we were in 5150, we heard a couple of those things on the tape, and it was definitely impressive and more than just noodling. It's funny, there's an anecdote in the book where Steve Vai came to 5150 and Ed said, "Here, check this out," played him some music, and Steve was just knocked out by the guitar piece. And he's like, "Are you going to put that out?" And Ed's like, no, this is just something for me. And, again, when we would go into 5150, you would look on the walls and there were these shelves and they would be lined with, blank cassettes or not blank cassettes, but cassettes filled with ideas and CDs filled with ideas. And I was joking to Chris the other day, like at one point I was sort of thinking like, I wonder if I could just run over there and scoop up a handful of those and run out, run out of the studio before Ed could catch me.
And that would be the last Guitar World interview.
Yeah, no, it's incredible access you had. And like I say, once you're in that inner sanctum, then, you're kind of part of the family. They considered you're either all in or you're all out, and a lot of people didn't really understand that. They were very private, the fans wanted more interviews, of not just the guitar, but they wanted more music. They wanted more, more of everything they could. Like you said, one album in the last 20 years was not enough to satiate the fanatical Van Halen, general music loving population. They really, they were used to one album a year in the early Warner Brothers days,
Sure.
like clockwork, a new album every year for the first 5 years, and then a little longer till 1984. But, it started gaining, more time in between albums, with the four with Sammy, and then of course the one with Gary Sharon. Now we know that you guys tell the full story. We want to encourage everybody to go out and get the book. If you're watching this before October 5th, pre-order it. Hatchet Books. It's really an amazing read. I've read it myself, and I'm a Van Halen historian. So incredible job, guys. And more importantly, if it's after October 5th, get down to your favorite bookstore or on Amazon, and get this book. Really appreciate you guys joining us.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Jay.